And away we go. It is George in the Jungle right here on BearcatJournal.com. As I don't know what happened to Aaron. He is having some internet issues. So I am going to fill in and get the ball rolling, get this bad boy started. This show is brought to you by Remington Tavern, 8892 Glendale Milford Road. They have daily happy hour, 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon Wednesdays, and bottle cap bonanza on Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. The Instagram is at Remy Tav Cincy. Follow on Facebook and get down there. Enjoy some great times at the Remington Tavern. George, are you a regular for Wednesdays, for Whiskey Wednesdays?
They have great bourbon there. They have a good selection.
There you go.
Good selection. So yeah, I'm a regular somewhere every Wednesday for bourbons usually. I got to watch that because I'm on these meds after this back surgery, and there's certain medicines I shouldn't be taking with the alcohol. I hear like OxyContin and alcohol doesn't mix very well.
So, probably not.
No,
probably not.
I probably don't need to find that out at my age either. It can return to the 70s for me if I do that. It'll be like Xander Hall at UC, where you would just be coming in your suite. Here, try this. No.
You'll be tackling a tree before you know it.
Yeah, that's happened. That did happen. I felt like tackling one Saturday night.
Oh, boy. I hear you, brother. I hear you.
Yeah, how you holding up? Good to see you.
I'm good. It's
tough.
Owning a message board is not a lot of fun in these times.
That's a bad time to play not a very good game when you're playing your best opponent of the year so far, playing on the road, and you're playing against a guy who's probably going to be a first-team All-American. My God. I knew that dude was good, but he was probably better than advertised tonight.
That's who he is. Like that's what he is. That's who that guy, I mean, he scored 38, he's averaging 25. Somebody said on the on my disaster of a Twitter mentions right now, they were like, somebody always has a career night against UC. I was like, that's just who he is. That's not a career night, unfortunately. And
no, if you look at his shooting percentages and stuff, that is him.
Cincinnati actually had like the best game of the year defensively on him in terms of his field goal percentages and like his efficiency. They made him work. I thought they did as good as you can possibly do. I don't know if you agree or not. My problem was they let their other two best players play exceptionally well. In Poplar and the point guard, Brickus. Poplar and Brickus. Those two guys they scored 25 points. They go a combined 7 of 16 from the floor, 7 of 12 from the floor. Brickus makes 3 of 5 from 3. Poplar has 10 rebounds. Brickus has 9 assists. Like, Dixon is going to get his. If you let the other two guys feast, you're in trouble. And that's what they did. That's what they let happen.
Yeah, but I was very afraid going into this game, too. Villanova's a team that gets to the free throw line, including Dixon a lot. And I was afraid of that part of it, that UC wouldn't. Villanova would. UC did finally start getting to the line. I don't think they shot a free throw in the first half.
They did not.
But you knew Villanova was going to get to the line a lot, and they finished something like 14 of 17 or somewhere in there. So there was definitely, you lose by 8 and you lost by 8 at the free throw line. It's not that simple, obviously. But I was a little upset with Dixon down the stretch when it got to be, I don't know what the score was. I want to say it was like a 4 or 6 point game. And then he gets plenty of room to shoot a 3 wide open, nails it. And then the next time comes off a screen and hits a 3, nails it. And then it was like catch up city. Then they were in really big trouble. And I thought they got that game down to where it was manageable, and then they let that happen. And I say let that happen. The kid is good, but the thing about too.
I was just going to say, I thought they ran two really good sets to get them open. So I do give them credit for there.
And that's right where I was going. Is you give Villanova credit now because they're full of transfers. I mean, that whole team is brand new. So they are finally starting to, probably learn about each other and what works, get into their flow. They're going to be a pretty decent team. That's not to excuse UC losing tonight, because I don't think UC should have lost to them. But that's not going to be a 500 team probably when all is said and done.
Yeah. Is Aaron? Is he around?
I'm here.
There we go.
The hamsters got back on the wheel.
Yeah, he took the hamsters off. He kind of, brushed off the shavings from them, got them a little water, and then he put the hamsters back on the wheel, and now his internet is working again.
Yeah, they're up and running well too. You got a good picture there, Aaron.
Good deal.
Not pixelating or anything. Those hamsters are rolling.
Let's go.
All right, thanks, Chad. Thanks for filling in, and good job getting this thing underway. We were talking obviously about the UC basketball game.
Well,
and Dixon and
I just want to make sure we got our people who pay to get mentioned. Did we get the read off?
Yeah,
I got the read.
Okay. Very good job.
All right.
I'm a professional. I know what I'm doing.
He is a professional. He's been doing this for a year or two.
I forgot to mention Cincy Light. Also Cincy Light.
Cincy Light Studios. Let's go.
Which you can get at Remington Tavern.
Yes, you can. And I had some last week there. And I have some in the fridge, but I'm not going to drink any tonight. I'm still getting over this surgery, and I got to be careful. And as I told you before we went on the air, Aaron, I wasn't very careful last Saturday night during the UC football game.
We'll get to that game eventually. But first, we got to talk about this loss. The Villanova-Cincinnati loss, 68-60 was your final. Nobody played well. Nobody. For Cincinnati.
No. And the two early fouls on Mitchell, it just kind of, that helped set the tone for Dixon to do anything he wanted to do pretty much the rest of the game down there. Because I don't know, and that was a matchup. I, honest to God, and I did plenty of research before this game, but I thought Mitchell might make a difference and be able to keep this guy at least under control. But I'm not sure anybody can after seeing him tonight.
I don't feel like the refs.
I
don't feel like the refs called fouls the same the rest of the game after those two Mitchell fouls. I feel like they called those, and then they just stopped calling anything that was down low, as far as like just guys rocking into each other and what have you. But in any case, it did kind of mess up the flow for Mitchell there in the first half.
And, I felt like it did.
And
the other guys, what we saw was the other guys who have looked good against these teams that aren't necessarily from big conferences, guys like Tyler Betsy who play well in those games. It was just a disappearing act tonight. I mean,
he looked like a freshman tonight.
Yeah, and they're going to. It's disappointing to see it happen.
Unfortunately, you had a night tonight where he looked like a freshman. You had a night where Connor Hickman looked like a guy who's either playing too many minutes and is a little tired, or playing out of position and is still trying to figure that out, or is playing in a conference where he shouldn't be playing. And whatever the case may be, I'm not saying he doesn't belong. I'm certainly not saying that, but
he did not have his best game and never really got the flow at all. It just felt like he never got in the flow of this one.
You also didn't have Simas's best game. He missed a lot of shots tonight. You had Aziz struggling when he was trying to play back to the rim. They're still doing that for reasons I don't understand.
Well,
and your bottom three guys on the bench, Josh Reed, Tyler Betsy, Arlington Page, the three of them combined for 6 points.
right. And probably Reed had 5 of those, if the 4 or 5 of them.
He had all 6.
Okay, that go figure. And what worries me about Bandego is every time the competition gets tougher like this in a bigger game, bigger environment, a team that is more talented down low, even though I don't think Villanova is exactly loaded down there other than Dixon. But I mean, the dude had 1 bucket early in the game, and that was it.
It was the putback. It was the putback dunk.
It's just right. It's no help. I mean, you can't have that, and that's why the quicker Page can get up to speed, and I have a lot of hope for that kid, the better they're going to be, because we saw this last year. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in a lot of big games where you needed some kind of presence down there offensively, they just don't get it with him.
Page played a lot of important minutes down the stretch as you were trying to make your last final push. Page was in for. Did he finish the game? He may have. He may have.
He may have.
Because Aziz only played 21.
I will say this: I don't ask me. Sometimes my eyesight's not all that good. I'm like, Christ, is that Mitchell or Page guarding Dixon? And it's and I'm like, move your damn feet. And he did move his damn feet, and he actually, played a pretty good. I don't think Dixon got a bucket on that one. I think he put up kind of a shot that he probably didn't want to and had to go over him, which is what you got to make that big dude do. And it didn't go in. I was pretty impressed with that. So is it going to happen this year with Page? I don't know, but it probably better given what we see out of Aziz when you get in games like this against higher competition.
The issue that a lot of people had in the chat from the aftermath and online was Cincinnati got down to 2 in the second half, and you tried to steal minutes, right? You tried to take more or less all your starters out, and you ended up running a lineup out there of Day, Hickman, Josh Reed, Tyler Betsy, and Arlington Page.
Yes.
After you got down 2. And that was a critical misstep by the staff.
I felt like it was.
Instead of stepping on the neck and trying to continue this run where you're chipping, finish chipping. Instead of doing that, instead of stepping on the neck, we end up pissing down our leg, and we lose all momentum, taking out all of your important starters and bringing in all your backups with Connor Hickman.
Yeah, when I'm running and I'm running like that, I kind of want to stay with that. I understand you want guys rested and ready to go for that final stretch, but that's a feel thing by a head coach, and yeah, that one bothered me tonight.
What you got?
That one bothered me.
So I'm going through it to make sure, like, I had the way that the substitution pattern.
Yeah, the first time I went through it, Chad, I went the opposite way on the. I'm like, wait a minute, did I drink this?
The original substitution came at 15:32. Day, Reed, and Page came in for Hickman, Mitchell, and Aziz. And they were, at that point, down 5. CMOS makes a 3 to cut it to 4 with 14:18 left. And then at that point, the only substitution that UC made was they took Jizzle out at 13:51 and brought Betsy in. So that would have been Day, Betsy, CMOS, Reed, and Page. And then at 13:29, they take CMOS out and put Hickman in, which gave you that situation from 13:29 when they were down 3 until 10:47 when they were down 6, and that's when they brought James Mitchell, Lukosius, and Bandego back in the game. So it really wasn't as drastic as it felt.
Yeah, it
I
did
guess.
feel drastic. It did, and you're right.
But the problem was
the
they
momentum.
went cold. They went
Right.
cold.
The
Right.
momentum
So
was
from
out
that
the window.
13-29 point, I think they went 1 for their next 9, Aaron.
Yes.
So it wasn't as drastic on the scoreboard as it felt. It felt a
Oh,
lot
it felt
worse.
terrible.
It really was only like a 1 point difference from when the substitutions were made until
Right.
those guys were brought back in. But it did feel like it was maybe worse than the actual like the numbers say. But to your point, Aaron, it felt like the starters were cold when they came back in.
Correct. Yeah, all momentum was gone
So,
at that point.
Yeah,
I was just curious for my
Yeah.
own
Yeah.
sanity, like what the actual like numbers on it were, because I think people are overreacting a little bit. That did not in any way, shape, or form cost them the game. The starters came back in, they were down 6.
No, not in and of itself. No,
The starters didn't
momentum
play well
lost
enough to
it.
win.
But they got it back down to where it was manageable, where they could have, even after that point, they got it back down to a manageable number. I can't remember how many minutes were left. I keep going back to those back-to-back threes by Dixon, and that was just a knife to the heart there, and I'd have to go back through that game book and find it. But I felt like that's when it really, really those 2 possessions, and yes, you give Villanova credit for getting it to their man in that situation, and the one time he was wide open. I'm not sure how that happened, and I don't think that should happen, but I thought that's where the game really, at that point down the stretch, got away from them, as opposed to the other one where it felt like that was a momentum buster, and it didn't help. It did not help, but they still had a chance to win that game and didn't get it done.
It was a 6-point game with 3:54 left, and it felt like UC had some momentum at the final media timeout, and then
right. But hey, again, no one's going to go undefeated anymore. You didn't want to lose this one. This was the first big nugget on the schedule, and it's a road game, and all that. There's every reason in the world to get up and want to win this game, and they didn't do it.
I'd argue that Georgia Tech was your first big nugget on the schedule, but you can't.
Well,
you can't.
Aaron, I would too until the game was played and UC
Sure.
easily. So I felt like they obviously early in the game is a little different. All games are going to be close early, but I didn't feel like they were challenged nearly as much as what we were seeing tonight.
And I know some people are upset about the scheduling already because you have as many cupcakes as you did in a row, and then you have this happen, and people are arguing that you should probably schedule tougher opponents and what have you. I think Wes has already talked about he wants to be in an MTE next year, so it may take care of itself. We're out of the contracts that the Bone Zone had left us in, so we'll see what happens going forward. I'm curious to see what scheduling looks like next season as well.
I love playing the tough competition. I know you can't do it night in and night out.
Nor should you, especially
right.
with the conference at 20
Correct.
games and all of that. So
correct, but you also got to toughen your team up too. You can't, be bumping up against, and they're not doing that this year. I mean, it's still December 3rd. So it's not like you're bumping up against a conference schedule before you're playing some tough games, and you got Xavier and Dayton on the way, which both of those are going to be challenges. So would I like to see a couple more in there? Heck yeah, there is no doubt about it. But when you got Georgia Tech on the road, Villanova on the road, Xavier at home, and Dayton on the neutral court, that's 4 pretty good games. I would like to see a couple more. I definitely would. And hopefully next year they do it that way.
Well, only time will tell on that. But kind of getting to your point, Howard would be on Sunday. You have them Howard at 3-5, and then Xavier, of course, at 7-1. on the following Saturday.
Is Howard the game last year that had the dudes that were the announcers that were? Oh
Yes, yes.
God.
I think
Can we bring them in for that game?
I think we should bring them in for that game.
I'll tell you.
Let them just bring them in for a segment. Like, you don't even have them do the whole game. Bring them in for a segment. Let them do what they do. That was fantastic.
I can't believe I forget what that guy kept saying now in the first. I mean, he used the same phrase like 15 times. Oh my God. What was it that kid kept saying? I was crying. It was amazing. That was actually fun. It was fun, and that was just a crazy game, too. God, that game was crazy.
But it'll be interesting to see what West does with this team facing its first real adversity, and seeing how this team responds to a loss. Because Howard, you should destroy Howard. You should embarrass Howard, truthfully. But you can't let that game get in the way of business. You have to take care of business, focus on Howard, and then get to Xavier. You cannot let the crosstown shootout just kind of fog the fact that you do have a game in between now and then.
It'd be nice to get Dan Skillings back too, and I think he would have helped out a lot tonight because of his mouse in the house. And it was I think that's what it was. There's a mouse in the house when a guard was scoring down low or something. I think that's what it was. Oh my God. I'm so glad that was remembered because I was crying. But I hope Dan Skillings is getting close. A game like tonight, I think he could have made a difference. He's the kind of guy that can do anything and everything for you, and that includes creating some plays down there on the offensive end that wasn't happening tonight, at least not happening enough. So hopefully they get him back in time for the shootout. And I would love, and I don't know if there's any chance of this, I'd love to see him get some minutes this Sunday and just, knock a little rust off and get back into the flow before they host the X-Men on the following Saturday.
Well, there's plenty of basketball to be played before we get to the new year and some big games looming on the horizon.
How do you feel so far? I mean, you feel pretty good? Or tonight kind of worries me a little bit because of the disappearing act by some guys that I think they're going to have to bank on when it gets into conference play.
Like I said, I don't think you can afford to have everyone on your team have an off night. You can't afford for everyone on the team to have an off night. Somebody has to stand out in the crowd. And I guess you could make the argument that Jizzle James did tonight.
Jizzle had a good game.
With 19 points. But outside of that, like, you've got to have you can't have CMOS have a bad night and then Jizzle be the only player in double digits, I guess. Like, this team, the way it's built, I think this team is built to have bench points, and it's built to have 3 guys scoring double digits.
And before on a break, especially when he's challenged, I want Day to take about another maybe this much more of a step towards the rim before he takes off and tries to jam it. And he got fouled on that play, and maybe that's why he missed it. But damn it, I've seen that too many times.
But you have to have multiple guys scoring double digits, and your bench can't score 14 on 2 guys, and that's it. When you're getting, especially again, those 3 guys, Josh Reed, Tyler Betsy, Arlington Page, they had 42 minutes and in total had 6 points. That's a lot of minutes with not a lot of output.
Right. Yeah. No, it's definitely a concern. We'll see where they are in about, I don't know, less than 2 weeks anyway, after that Xavier game.
Yep, that'll be that's kind of your measuring stick game at this point, especially after tonight. So
Well,
we'll
and
see
given
what.
what happened, let's face it, seriously, what's happened in the history of this thing too, and what has been their dominance over the last, I don't know, 30 years, 25 years. It's time for UC, and I'm not saying they haven't in the past. They probably have and still came up short. So I'll give Xavier credit there. But you've got to take that game as serious as Xavier seems to take it. That's a big game.
And Wes is no stranger to rivalry games, so we'll see what happens this year. I think it's probably got to be eating at him that he has.
I'll tell you what, if it's not,
Things
it
have
should.
gone.
Mm-hmm. It should be.
So we'll see. But there's another loss we got to talk about. A season that has come.
Great.
A season that has come to an end as TCU beats your Bearcats 20-13 in the snow. That team from Texas that on just as recently as Wednesday was practicing in 80-degree weather came up in the snow and still they didn't score in the second half, but they still did enough to win the game 20-13. George, that one was tough.
You kick off and you get a 3-and-out, and it's a night game in Nippert. It's like, all right, perfect. They got the 3-and-out. They're punting, and kaboom, if it doesn't happen with special teams again. And I felt like that was so big, what happened there with that turnover and leading to it just – and the special teams, again, were not anything to write home about the entire night. Once again, the punts, I don't know if maybe one of them got over 40 yards. I'm not sure. I don't know what went on there. It was another game that I came away from feeling like UC should have won that game. And, you go back to the coaching staff and you go back to, are these guys ready in all these different situations they're going to be in? And I have no idea how in the world you have that turnover that they had early in the game. And turnovers killed them in this game. I mean, that's why they lost the game. And we'll talk about another game later where turnovers are why you lost the game. But this one, you can't make those mistakes. And for some reason, UC never has enough to overcome those mistakes. They're just not quite good enough yet against a Big 12 team to make those kind of errors and overcome them. And I just it was sad to see because that was a game they could have and should have won. And there's just a whole lot of things you can point the fingers at. And, you look at those rushing stats and you just shake your head that you end up losing the game. But, you can't throw the ball more than 3 yards down the field for some reason. I say all of a sudden, it's been happening half the year now. There's something going on wrong, whether it's your receivers, whether it's schematically, I don't know. I didn't feel like they were having those issues earlier in the year, and it just feels like somebody put their finger on something who played against UC and figured them out, and the rest of the schedule had them figured out in the passing game as well. Seemed like after Texas Tech, it just never happened again.
Yeah, you finish with 373 yards of offense, 160 pass yards, 213 rush yards, which is enough to better TCU's 336 yards of total offense. But they had more pass yards. They were a passing team, in fairness. But they've
got some good receivers. They really do. They've got nice receivers, but that still. UC doing what they did on the ground without those mistakes, they should have won that game.
Joe Royer gets
a turnover too, and Corey played his butt off and had another great game. and he had a costly turnover as well. But those are going to happen. But it just seems like there have been way too many of those lately, and I don't know where the fault lies with the coaching staff. But by golly, they got to take a lot of the heat for what went wrong after they started 5-2,
5-2,
5-2, and you don't get bowl eligible. That's
dropped
unacceptable.
You dropped 5 straight. Joe Royer had 7 catches for a whopping 32 yards. Xavier Henderson, 3 catches on his 9 targets for 46 yards. You had, of course, the fumble. I guess technically a fumble on the punt return by Jamoy Mays that kind of put the entire first drive that TCU you stopped them 3 and out, and then you gave them momentum right away.
That's a total tone setter right there. It is just, I mean, the air goes out of you, and it went out of the stadium when that happens, because it's happened so damn many times. But yeah, you start the game with a 3 and out, against a team that you thought might be able to move the ball on UC, and you get that 3 and out, and you force them to punt, and then the next thing you know, your defense is right back out there again.
Mason Fletcher averages 36.8 on his 5 punts, his long of 40. That's abnormal for him.
What's going on there? I
don't know
if he changed a little bit of his style to try to get the ball off quicker so he's more attractive, at the next level. I don't know what's going on, but something happened.
I don't know if he was injured. I don't know if Sworsby was injured, and maybe that's why we didn't see the deep ball anymore. I don't know. I don't know any of these things, George. What I do know is this team finishes 5-7. They are not bowl eligible, at least by standard rules. We'll see if any teams turn down any bowl games and kind of go from there. But if they did, Cincinnati would be one of the top teams to receive an invitation. So we'll see. I don't know when.
I'll tell you what, I would go. I would go if I had a chance. I would go.
Financially, it would make no sense not to. But that would be the only thing pushing me to go.
I think any chance you get to have those more practices and get it, just, to me, although I don't know how you feel about this, but I think we're going to see a roster turnover that's going to rival what we saw last year.
Well, and we'll see about that. We've seen some names entering the portal. We saw Kalen Carroll is probably the biggest name. Sterling Burkhalter entered the portal. Aaron Turner
dropped the other night. That wasn't like him, and I like that kid, and I was really pulling for him, but he had a bad drop in that game.
Aaron Turner entered the portal, so we'll see what the portal ends up looking like. And the next coming days, I would imagine that would be, I think the portal has to be, I think it's only open until, I think it's only 4 weeks at this point that it's open. So by the end of the month, you'll have a pretty good idea as to how many guys are leaving. Some of the other, I've seen some other names, like a punter, I believe. I think it was Brady Young.
I know I saw Carter Brown's name out there, the kicker.
Yes, Carter Brown, which that's no surprise when he loses his job.
No, I was not surprised by that one bit.
No.
Not by one bit. I'm having a lighting issue here. There.
So we'll see what that all looks like. That said, 5-7 is what you end up with. Obviously, 6-6 was the goal this season. George, where do you place your expectations for next season? You missed expectations this year by 1 win.
Right.
But where does that put expectations for you?
You always got to make. I mean, you always have to be bowl eligible. You always have to be wanting to be in the mix for a conference championship. That's asking a lot for next year based on what we saw this year. Not the bowl eligibility, but being in the mix for a conference championship is going to be really tough. because I still think there are plenty of players away. I think there's still a lot of work to do defensively. Obviously, something's going on in that wide receiver room. I don't know what it is. I don't know why guys weren't getting open. Maybe it's the quarterback room. I don't think so. The kid sure looked good early in the season. And we'll see how many of those guys take off. And then you also look, are there going to be changes in that coaching staff? I think naturally there will be. Coaches leave, come and go of their own volition. So there's going to be some movement there too. But next year you got to win 6 or 7 games. You have to.
Oh, I'd raise the bar even higher. I think you need to get to 8 to stay in the mix. I think 8 should be the bar, and anything more than that is, of course, gravy.
I would love for that. I would love for them to be in the hunt and be in the mix, because we saw, this year how many teams hung around in the Big 12, to make it into that Big 12 championship game. It was a nice race, and I would love for them to stay in that. And I had hopes for them to stay in it this year, but man, they've got to show. I really wanted to see a lot more improvement, and I think obviously everybody did over last year, and we saw some this year, but not enough to my satisfaction. I mean, I just not enough. And I know they're not going to change head coaches. That's just out of the question financially. And I'm not in there every day seeing exactly where they are and where their progress is coming from and where they think the progress is. But next year is going to be a big year on that front, as far as I'm concerned.
I think that the defense, obviously, it's the first season you had under Tyson Veit. He came in after the portal had already been dealt with. The only portal action he got to even see as a coordinator was after the spring games.
Right.
So he hasn't really had an opportunity to bring in his guys per se. So maybe he has an opportunity to do that this offseason as opposed to last offseason. So we'll see what happens in that regard. I think the bigger thing is you've got to figure out what the hell is going on with special teams. We all love Kerry Combs. I don't think that's even a discussion we need to have as far as how much adoration we have and what he's done for this program. That said, I don't think he is the guy to lead your special teams at this point. I think you have to change it. That is one thing that you cannot go into next season with things remaining status quo and hope for things to just get better magically. So you either have to bring in a guy to be your special teams coordinator or find somebody else on staff to be that guy. And that's something that you've got to figure out, because how many yards were lost in the hidden yardage of special teams when you're not able to get a punt through, or when you're not able to cover punts properly, or you're fielding punts that you shouldn't be fielding, or not fielding punts that you should be fielding.
Or you're giving up fake punts for first downs in a situation that screamed, hey, watch out for the fake, right?
There's so many situations as far as special teams go that you have to more than raise an eyebrow at this point. Like, unfortunately, it's come to the point where it has to cost someone their job. I am very bullish on this. I cannot be talked out of it. I think that if you're going in with Kerry Combs as your special teams coordinator next season, then you've made a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I've known the guy forever, and I'm not going to call for his job because I respect him too much. But something's got to give on that end. You're right. I mean, there is. It would be, and that's going to be up to Scott Satterfield and what he sees on that. And it's going to be a tough call for him too, I'm sure. A very tough call. But you can't. I mean, Kerry's no dummy. He sees what's going on. He has to expect to be held accountable for a lot of what we saw that came up short in special teams this year. You have to. I mean, if you're not holding the special teams coordinator accountable for that, who the hell are you holding accountable? Each individual kid, include all the special teams players. No, you can't do that. Yeah, I don't know what was going on. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. And the issue is the year before, the special teams cost them some.
Correct.
Nothing this year, but it did cost them a game or two. You can say a couple things happened in that Miami game a year ago that special teams certainly cost them that game. Although when, Miami was a much better team last year than probably we gave them credit for. But also the BYU game was a game that could have been won without a special teams miscue. So it was a disaster. And you cannot there's got to be some different structure with that part of the game going into next year if you're serious about winning.
In the chat, Geoff says corners improved. I'll give him that, but special teams was a disaster. I would counter that. I don't know that corners actually improved. I know that the talent level of the corners improved from last season. I'll say that. But I don't know. We still aren't seeing turnovers. We aren't seeing. We saw less penalties, I guess, from the corners than we did a season ago. But
yeah, definitely we saw that.
We aren't seeing interceptions for a guy who's running the secondary. So I'm still left concerned with.
And I know where you're coming from there. I also do think, and part of this goes back to what you said about the portal and the guys and Vite coming in when he came in. That's an issue. And I don't think the talent level on defense or the speed is there yet that they need to get to play in this conference and play well. And hopefully they can get to that. Hopefully that can be fixed in the portal. But they've got to do it. You don't just sit here and talk about it. They got to be banging. And this whole setup with how they do their recruiting and identifying who to get in the portal and all of that stuff, it's got to start bearing some fruit here. It does.
Yeah.
It did this year. I mean, if you look, a lot of the best players, a lot of the most productive players, I should say, came out of that portal.
I agree. I think it'll be interesting to see if there is any movement as far as coaching staff goes outside of special teams. I would think personally that it would come more on the offensive side of the ball than the defensive side of the ball, because I think that the defensive side of the ball was probably more productive given what they had than the offensive side of the ball. But it'll be interesting to see if anything.
A lot of work to do this offseason again, just like last year. I mean, too much damn work. And that's why that's probably why I'm tempering my expectations a little bit more. I'm not saying they, can't get the 8 wins or that we shouldn't hope for that or expect. But this year, I just did not see the amount of progress that I was hoping to see. And early in the year, I thought I did. I really did. I thought they got off to a great start, and something happened. I don't know what that something is. Hopefully Scott Satterfield knows exactly what it is, and they get that fixed, because they were playing pretty good football early in the year.
I'd also think that he knows that if he doesn't get things done by the end of his third season, that seat is not getting any cooler. Whether it be after 3 or 4 seasons, whenever it is that Cincinnati decides that they've reached the line. But you're going into year 3 and you've got to figure some things out. And I imagine that as he makes these offseason decisions, that's not lost on him. So we'll see what he's willing to do and how desperate he is to try and make sure that we get back to where we are competing for championships, which is a line that he likes to beat the drum on. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, that should be the standard.
Well, talking about another team that's pretty much out of the picture as well, George. We've got the last team here in the Queen City that plays football, your Cincinnati Bengals. I didn't feel good about this one at any point in time during the season when I saw the Steelers looming on the horizon, and Cincinnati loses. sure, you can call it a shootout. 44-38. The Bengals were never in control of this one, always playing from behind. And it was, I don't even know. It wasn't an ugly game. I don't think. It was just another game where Joe Burrow can't make any mistakes whatsoever because the defense simply cannot bail you out of any errors.
Right. And Joe did have mistakes. Joe had some turnovers.
Sure. Well, the interception that he had did tip two different players' hands before it was intercepted.
Yeah, correct.
So and that one I wouldn't necessarily put on him, but the sack fumble, that's TJ Watt being TJ Watt.
I my God, I knew he had no idea that guy was behind him. And Joe's got really good pocket awareness. And I mean, great pocket awareness as far as I'm concerned. And I knew he had no idea that guy was there. And I was afraid that was going to happen, and it did. But when you put up the amount of points they put up in that game, that should be enough to win in the NFL.
It's embarrassing how many times he's put up over 30 points and 3 touchdowns and still lost games, especially when they start comparing him to guys like Peyton Manning or guys like Tom Brady and showing their stats in similar situations, and the losses just simply aren't there the way they are with poor Joe Burrow.
Yeah, 4 losses now after scoring 33 or more points. That's
unheard of. It's unheard of.
It is unbelievable. I'm a Lou Anarumo guy, but it's going to fall on him. They're probably not going to fire Zach Taylor. They're probably going to go looking for something in the defensive side of the ball and make a move there. That's how I think it'll play out. As much as I like Lou, and 2 years ago, he's a finalist for head coaches at some of these places. As much as I like him, I cannot excuse that play with Justin Fields coming in. And so, you're going to be running the option, he's either going to pull it and run it or he's going to give it. That's what's going on with that play. And for him to pull it and just stroll for that first down, someone explain that to me. Like, how in the world is not every guy on that defense knowing it's him or him? Now, they could have pulled some kind of trick, but still, someone's got to be responsible for that edge and that quarterback rolling that way.
I don't know if it's necessarily more on Lou or more on the players in that situation. Regardless, you've still spent 9 of 10 important draft picks of the last several drafts on defensive players. And you're still left here wondering where these guys are. I mean, you got guys like Miles Murphy, who still is, we're wondering where he is.
Right.
It's baffling how much lottery capital they've spent or draft capital they've spent on defensive players that have just simply not panned out.
Well, think about the last edge guy they drafted that has played and done anything at all is Sam Hubbard in 2018. 2018.
Everyone's talking about he needs to be put out to pasture, George.
Well, no, I know. And now he's been hurt all year. But I'm saying that's the last guy they drafted that has made any sort of impact at all as a starting defensive player. That's the last edge guy they've drafted. They went out and got Hendrickson, thank God.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if they didn't have him, imagine how bad this would be. But they have whiffed and whiffed and whiffed. And quite honestly, when it comes to draft, they've whiffed when they've drafted offensive line as well.
You've got to. I agree, Steve, in the chat here. So he says it is on the players, but you cannot fire all the players. You can fire the DC. Absolutely.
Oh yeah,
I'm all for it.
That's always been that way, and I totally get it.
I, however, don't think you stop there. I don't think you can stop there. I think you have to fire Zach Taylor too.
Yeah, I don't have. I said that last week and the week before. I came to the conclusion. I mean, there is something wrong when you have an offense that can put up that many points. You're still losing games, and you're still losing close games. And when you look at that close game record, um, it fell on the dude, and that end of that Bears game was just one of the most atrocious things I've ever seen in my
Oh my
life
God.
in the NFL. But
Yes.
you know what? They made the move that they knew they had to make when
Well,
you see something like that. And then when you looked at that guy's record in close games was bad too. It was horrible.
well, we were just talking about Scott Satterfield has to make sure that whatever moves he brings in as far as personnel goes, if he is going to be on the hot seat next year, this is a move that he has to be wary of because it's going to potentially make or break you being on the hot seat. Zach Taylor, you could have already made the change. Lou has, for all the things that Lou has done, he has never had a top 15 defense ever at the end of the season. They've all been, I think the highest I saw was maybe 16. But they were all essentially the bottom half. At
And
what point? At
does
what point do you make? At what point do you make a move? If you're the head coach and you know that this guy's got to get you there, and you know that you've got the offense that can get you there,
I think he'll be forced into making a move. If the Bengals don't make the big move, if that's my football team and I've put into that what I have, and I've got an offense that clicks the way this offense clicks, I'm getting a coach in here that wins with it with what I have on hand. Because there's a lot of coaches out there that could win with what they have on hand.
it's maddening. We'll see what happens, but essentially, unless the Bengals win out, they're done.
Yeah,
Even winning out, you still finish 9-8, and
9-8, which is what they finished at last year, and missed the show.
We'll see where the chips fall, but I simply don't believe that this team can finish.
Speaking of shows, and maybe the answer to my question was on Hard Knocks tonight. I don't know. I was watching that before I came in here for this show, and I hadn't gotten to the point in the Steelers game yet where they did get that first down on that little option run. But I'm anxious to see what if is shown about that whole situation. What I did see of the whole thing and the in-season Hard Knocks thing was pretty cool. It was pretty good. It was good hearing what the Steelers had to say about the Bengals and how much, the respect level Mike Tomlin and that coaching staff has for Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase is where you would expect it to be. I mean, they're sitting there looking at film, just basically like, these guys, they can kill you so many ways. And they talk about Chase and the cut he can make and still be going full speed. They were just flabbergasted, but I will say this, they got their guys up to try to control all that and play as well as they can. And, they talked to Minkah Fitzpatrick about doing what he can to keep Chase from going off against him. And that includes trying to get in his head, which some of that was funny too. There's a history there. I'm anxious to see if the show addresses that play, because that was one I just I couldn't believe it. When Justin Fields keeps that ball and had plenty of room to roll for that first down. It's like, and yeah, okay, I told you I had a lot to drink Saturday, so I'm laying at home watching the game, and I'm thinking, is it me? Like, it could be my brain's really not functioning all that well today, but did I miss something that made that a spectacular play that you wouldn't be expecting that Fields might hold that ball and run right with it?
No, that's just the Bengals being the Bengals this season.
Yeah, it's terrible.
In other news, the Reds, while they haven't made a move this week, there are rumors circulating that they are potentially bringing back Jesse Winker.
How about that? he's an interesting guy, and I can tell you from the media side of things, he was great to deal with.
I'm sure he was.
We love that guy, but he has had an interesting path since he left Cincinnati and that whole weird thing in Seattle and
Seattle, Milwaukee, the Mets.
Mets. Yeah, it's been a weird path, but
And he had a tumultuous relationship with the Mets while he was here. So
yeah, he did. He did. I think is that where he got into it with the fans out there too?
yes,
Yeah,
1,000%.
That was actually kind of funny. I kind of got a kick out of that, but yeah, that was. He told him, "I'll see you tomorrow." That was some funny stuff. I don't know what to think of that move. I really don't. I'm kind of in Tito I trust mode.
Sure.
And I think probably most Reds fans are because he's seen success. He knows what it takes to build success. Going to be very, very interesting. But that is one I did not see coming.
I don't love it. If you're going to bring him in, I hope you bring him in on essentially a veteran minimum deal, more or less a minor league invite, and see if he can stick around, because I think you already have him in Fraley. If Fraley's able to play to what he was 2 years ago, last year, I think he was just nagged by injuries all year, and I don't think he was ever right. But I don't think that that's the answer for what you're looking for when you're talking about bringing in a big bat corner outfielder.
I don't. I do not.
That is not the answer.
No, I expect more than that, and I think they definitely need more than that. He's one of those guys to me that's kind of like a Tommy Pham was this year, where you're like, okay,
yeah,
close, and we need a veteran that's kind of been there. That's kind of what I think Jesse is at this point.
He's like a last piece, not the piece that you build on.
Correct. That's he's a guy that's been that you bring in that can help you
to make your depth better.
Isn't going to choke. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's not the guy I want to see running out there 150 times a year.
No, he's a guy that you bring in to make your depth better, not the guy that you're building anything around. The other thing with baseball, I want to see what your opinion is on this. Commissioner Rob Manfred is talking about the golden at bat rule. I don't know if you've heard anything about this or not.
Boy, lay it on me. How have I missed this?
He's introduced the fact that they're kicking this around at the meetings, I guess, and this rule would allow teams one strategic opportunity per game to send their top hitter to the plate regardless of batting order.
That's just not baseball anymore.
No, that's
not
all-star. That's stuff that you would do with the all-star game. That's stuff that you would do.
Yeah, I don't like it. I think it's dumb. I think there's a reason. Well, there's a reason you have a team.
Correct.
You win as a team, and it's like, so I'm going to say, okay, the eighth inning, Aaron Judge made the final out, and then I get a couple guys on in the ninth, and I can bring Aaron Judge back to the plate. I'm not on board with that. I think that's stupid. That's
I don't love the ghost runner thing and the extra innings, but I understand.
I'm not big on that either.
I understand why they do it, to try and shorten the game. I get it.
Right.
At least there's a reason for it. This makes no sense.
Right. And the ghost runner thing also, it keeps you from burning the hell out of arms and bullpens.
Sure.
And I get that.
This is stupid.
Pitch clock, I like. I get that one. And I wasn't sure I would like it, but I caught on to that pretty quick in the spring training games. I'm like, I like this because it keeps everything moving. It's not like, you've got time to go grill a steak between, pitches to a guy. I think that's done its job. It's made these games move quicker, and to me, it's made the games just a lot more watchable. But this thing is a gimmick. This is silly.
there's ways to market your stars without having them come out as the quote golden bat best
Right.
player on your team to come out and take a bat. Figure out how to market your stars better. Not this.
Right.
This is
I mean,
this isn't it.
it's ridiculous. Next, it'll be like, yeah, and I don't know. God knows what they'll do next. You can, bring back a former pitcher to pitch one pitch or something to some guy. I don't know. It's just silly.
George, when I saw this, I had to go back and double check to make sure that it wasn't like a parody account or something like that. I truly thought I was.
I'm going to look this up as soon as we're done here because
it's unreal. It's unreal.
That's not baseball. That's you're just screwing everything up.
Manfred's terrible. Get him out of here.
Right.
Other than that, that's all I got this week, George. What's going on in high school? And we'll get out of here.
Yeah, best of luck in Kentucky. We got Ryle in 6A, Cooper 5A, Beechwood 2A going for state titles. Anderson on Thursday night going for the Division II title. Undefeated Anderson against undefeated Avon. So that's interesting. That'll be Thursday night, and then Moeller going for the state title on Friday night in Division I. Anderson playing in Division II.
There you go.
So that's almost over, man. It was a quick season, it seems like.
Sometimes they're quick, sometimes they're not fast enough, George.
Yeah, you know what? Come to think of it, the UC football season and the Bengals season drug a little bit.
Just saying.
Yeah.
That's all we got this week. Be sure to join us next week, Tuesday night, 9:00, barring any unforeseen Bearcats games that I had forgotten about. But we do thank Remington Tavern for being our sponsor as always. You can find them at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have their daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, bottle cap bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. Check them out on Instagram at RemyTavCincy, or check them out on Facebook. But for George Vogel, I'm Aaron Smith. We will be back next Tuesday to discuss all of your Cincinnati sports.
Thank you, Aaron.